Welcome back to First Light, where we shine a light on the stories of transformation, resilience, and leadership. Today's guest is David Vicknair, founding partner of Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers in New Orleans, a nationally recognized trial lawyer and co-host of the Overruled podcast. Today, we're going to dive into what drives him, how he's built a firm that's known for client-centric culture, and how he's using voice to make an impact beyond the courtroom. Let's get into it. David, I want to thank you for joining me today on First Light. Sure. You and I have got to know each other through business coaching, and I've always been so impressed by the things that you're doing to truly grow your firm. So for those who may not know you that are listening, introduce yourself and tell us what kind of inspired you to become a lawyer and your path into your own law firm.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Chris. Really kind of you to say that. Believe it or not, I wanted to be a football coach. So I kind of accidentally got convinced not to be a football coach by my dad and one of his good friends who was a famous high school football coach down here. I was on the fence between becoming a lawyer and a coach, and ended up going to law school. I had no lawyers in my family. And for about 4 years out of school, worked for a really, really good trial lawyer. Kind of came from the generation where there was no mediation. He had tried like 200 jury trials. And Rhett was a really good influence in me and let me just kind of go and develop skills in the first 4 years out from law school. And that was a really big help to me. And then Brad Scott kind of convinced me back in June of 15 to come and practice with him and go out on my own. And the rest is kind of like history. It's just kind of been like a wild ride of mistakes, screw-ups, fun, successes along the way since then.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the football. So you're going to go into being a football coach. So take me back to, that journey of going in to be a football coach.
Yeah, I was, that was kind of, football was my life in high school. I played a year in college, and my plan was to potentially become a GA and coach in college and or in high school. And it was kind of like my whole life. And I was kind of on the fence between doing that and law school. I love the game of football, the strategy, the preparation, the dedication, everything that it takes to really succeed in the game. And so with what you're doing at such a high level at your firm, what we're trying to do at our firm, it's a lot of the same parallels. And so I kind of like to think of a lot of the lessons I learned from football and apply them to practice and management of the firm.
I was going to say, so how did, I grew up playing sports too. And, how did your time in football really shape you as a leader and looking back and seeing where you're at now? How do you think that really shaped you as a leader?
That's a good question. I think it taught me what hard work really is. And also it taught me that, I was playing in high school at a time when like summer workouts, this is back in 01, 02. So summer workouts, weightlifting, that was becoming a thing. Believe it or not, that wasn't always a very regular thing at the high school level. And it taught me a lot about having to walk the walk from the standpoint of, the team, if you want them to follow the leaders on the team, have to see you in the summer months, sweating with them, running the stairs in the sand pit, doing all the things. If you want them to listen to you in the 8th week of the season when you have the district championship or a big game coming up. So those kind of leadership lessons extend far beyond high school or college sports. Knowing how to connect with other people, to communicate with different people who come from different backgrounds with different perspectives. I really think that sports are generational from the standpoint of team sports teach all of us leadership lessons that apply to our everyday lives, our families, us. We all have faults. We all fail. You, me, all of the lawyers that we know across the country that we're developing relationships with, we are imperfect. We're working on ourselves every day. It's the same thing that athletes are doing in team sports. And so I find it to be a very heavy parallel.
Yeah. I know you've handled some, really complex cases and multi-district litigation cases and all that, but really what I want to talk to you today is what you've done on the side of customer service in your law firm. And so I really want to talk a lot about how you kind of separate great law firms and, really great businesses, because, a law firm is a business from the good ones. And I know what you've done in your business is really adopt that unreasonable hospitality So talk a little bit about how you separate a great business, great law firm versus a good one, and what you've done with your firm to really become one of the great ones.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, because you have an incredible firm, and so to say that about our firm means a lot to me coming from you. I kind of look at it two ways. We talked about football just now, and and my team's probably tired of hearing me say this, but I do think of us. You just heard me say it in Scottsdale. I think of us as a restaurant and a football team. A lot of the things that a restaurant does, or what we do, what you do, Chris, what I do in a law firm sphere, like we are in the service hospitality business. So we lawyers, we think we're not. We were trained to think we're different. We look down upon marketing. We're trained to look down upon this idea that we're in the hospitality business. Whereas somebody, for example, who comes in through a hotel or a restaurant just is ingrained to understand we are in the hospitality business. I think that first it starts with all of our mindsets. How do we change our team's mindsets to get them out of their own heads and believing like they're above some of these concepts that we want to implement? Because you can go read a freaking book and you can bring the book into your law firm, your business, and be like, hey, we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, right? But if you can't affect change and implement it from the standpoint of convincing them why it's important, telling them the why, and then helping them and motivating them to execute it on a consistent basis, it's meaningless. Like it's just us talking about it on a podcast or at a conference and getting all excited about it, and then nothing freaking happens. What a waste of space and time, So for me, it all started with understanding like some of the concepts from football or parallel to the things that I was trying to do in our business. And I started to become better in what was happening in between my 2 years from the standpoint of like how I thought about what it meant to run a law firm. And I think that's where it should start for everybody as a law firm owner, is our mindset. Because once your mindset shifts and you work on it for a long time, and I'm still working on it, I know you still are too, right?
Every day.
Once you understand and really buy into how important working on your mindset is, then everything else becomes eminently easier, because you can see and visualize how do I motivate and communicate to everybody for how we want to implement these very important concepts. I know that seems very esoteric, but I'm like big on mindset, because I think Ben Glass was the first lawyer up in Virginia. I started listening to his podcast in 21 and 22 that really opened my mind to understanding how deficient my mindset was, and made me really start thinking about it and working on it and reading and focusing on it. And I truly think one of the lawyers told me the other day that I'm a completely different person than I was 3 years ago, and they didn't mean it in a bad way. So, and I really do think I am, because I have been working on my mindset. And so for anybody who's like, man, I want to put hospitality in my law firm, I want to do certain things in my law firm, I think you may agree with me, Chris. Like it starts with the owner's mindset.
Yeah, one thing we talk about a lot at our firm now is like raising our standards. And, if you as the owner allow mediocre to exist in your firm, and you as the owner approach things mediocre as well, then that's as good as you're going to get. And so until you demand excellence in your personal life, until you demand excellence around your people, you're just not going to get it. So such a big deal. But let's talk about, kind of implementing some of that change. I know when we were out in the conference together, there was a lot of bragging about how you're an executioner, and it's true. We go to so many of these business coaching programs and so many of these seminars, and we pick up so many great ideas, but then we go back to our businesses or our law firms, and we have a really hard time in implementing. So talk about how you're able to kind of implement, and maybe some of the smaller things that you did right away to build some traction in your firm.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a wild experience, to be honest with you, in Scottsdale. I know you're friends with Mike. I'm good friends with Mike now. I love Mike, but I was like, stop talking about me so much. That's truly in my head. I was mortified and wanted to hide under the table. But I'm a big list person, Chris, a to-do list person. I know some people think to-do lists are bullshit. Some people don't like to-do lists. But what I started doing when kind of like back in the end of 21 or beginning of 22, when I kind of decided to go down this growth path with the firm and my practice, I would go to a conference and I kind of this sounds very rudimentary, but I would take a Word document and I would distill down everything I liked into months. And I would put like I know I can probably get more things done than an average person. I think one of the things, better skills I do have is execution. So instead of like putting 4 or 5 things I wanted to get done in 1 month, I was like, I think I could get 7 or 8 of these things done in a month. And so what I would do is just take, okay, these are the things I really want to do, and it'd be like August 2022, and be like, these are the 8 things I'm going to get done this month. And I would break out the to-do list items, and it could be anything from like put HONA in client messaging service. It could be like look into this vendor, figure this double entry expense item, like certain things like that. Some things you'd rank in severity and prioritize, some not. And so I just, for the last 3 years, have been going to these conferences and meetings and masterminds. And, at the beginning, it was like a lot of people say this, it's like a fire hose hitting you in the head. You're like, holy crap, I have so much stuff to do. But if you just start hitting these items one after one after one after one, you'd be amazed how much you can get accomplished in a year. And even if you're like, I want to do these 4 things this month, even if you didn't get all 4 of them done, but you did 3, you made a lot of progress. And so the things I don't get done at the end of each month, I'll look at that action list. I'm still doing this today. And I'll be like, all right, is this still a priority? And if so, I move it into the next month and I shift the things around. And that's just kind of my system for some of these big picture things. And as you grow and get bigger, this, you're a lot bigger than us now, but as you get bigger, especially getting over the 20 hump for us, I think once you get over the 20 hump, it's like you just finally start to feel like the weight of the world is not on your shoulder. But we're going to be hopefully at about 30 team members at the end of this year. And as you get to that point, then it's like, okay, now I have like these really good people to help me with all this. It's just not me doing the list, and the ball starts moving even faster. So that's kind of my method. I really think, just like we talked about mindset, everybody's got to self-examine their self a bit and figure out like how do I work and how do I operate and what works for me, and just use that as my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I love it. And one thing we have to talk about today is your approach to marketing and the amazing things that you've done in marketing, and what you've done in a very competitive market like New Orleans, and how you've been able to do it. So let's talk a little bit about, for the people who don't know, Scott Vicknair and your brilliant marketing that you've done around the name Scott Vicknair.
I appreciate the compliment. It's a very competitive market. I am I was thinking last night, I'm like, how did I find myself in this industry? Because I am not like, I look at the people who are marketing in personal injury in New Orleans, and I'm not like trying to say mean things about them or anything like that. It's like one of these things is not like the other. So I don't know how I ended up in personal injury world, but I'm like, I'm not the kind of person who's prone to like rip up checks. I'm not the kind of person who likes the idea of putting my clients on the TV and talking about their results. Not to criticize any of that. It's just not me. I'm not personally comfortable with it. I don't like it. And I felt like when we started marketing, there was a desire and an appetite in this market, which I would probably argue at a macro level is probably present in almost every personal injury market in America, that the communities are hungering for something different. I think Mike has proven that in Detroit. They want something from a law firm who advertises. I believe they want something that's funny, that is memorable, that is good, that they feel good about, right? That they don't feel negative about. And at a macro level, it affects the brand of my firm, of your firm. Like what we put out there affects what people think of our brand, no different than Coca-Cola or Microsoft or anything like that. So when we started doing all this, it really just, as you know, and I told the story, it was a late night bottle of wine discussion with a close friend of mine. It was like, hey, Scott Vicknair is confusing. Like people think it's a person. And it had purposely been happening like for 5 or 6 years. Brad and I joke about people are always calling and looking for Scott Vicknair. And we're like, he doesn't exist. Because, a lot of law firms sound like a person's name. And so we're like, what if the whole theme was about Scott Vicknair being confusing? And I was like, well, that's pretty funny, but like that won't last forever. And here we are on month 16. And every month where I'm like, should we put like some call to action creatives? Everybody's like, stop. No, just don't stop, like this is going to go forever. And so I really do think it's going to just go forever, and there'll be, and the person who came up with this with me is a brilliant marketer, a friend of mine, and he's like, this will go forever. Like you will have spinoffs, you will have like whatever, but the theme will stay the same. It will be funny. And so far he's been proven right. So
So for those that may not be familiar with you or the commercials, kind of walk us through. I know you have one commercial that I think is just absolutely genius with your mom, and your mom's working at the front desk as the receptionist of your firm. So for those who don't know, I want you to share kind of the marketing genius behind it, because as small business owners, whether you're a law firm owner or whether you're running another type of business, this is all things that people could do. The things that you're doing at your firm, anybody can do, which is what I think is so impressive about what you've done. So you've done something that anybody can do, and then you've done it just at such a high level. So can you kind of share, and also, let people know how they can go watch that commercial, because it truly is amazing.
yeah, so thank you. So if you go on YouTube and look up Scott Vicknair Law Firm and go to our YouTube page, all our TV commercials are on there. So the theme is that Scott Vicknair is confusing, and everybody's confused because Brad Scott is my law partner. My name's David Vicknair, and so the law firm Scott Vicknair. So everybody's confused, and they think that I'm Scott Vicknair. They're looking for Scott Vicknair, and they can't figure it out. I think it resonates for a couple of reasons. It's true. People do get confused about it. I think generally people get confused about law firm names. Like they think it's a person, or they make fun of them because there's like 12 names and they can't forget all the goddamn lawyers on it. But, that kind of has spun out to like taking some principles we learned from Mike, like my mom. I was like, I think I could weave my mom into this theme. And so we have a ton of spots now with my mom, and true to Mike's experience with putting his mom in his law firm commercials, my mom is way more famous than anybody else. Like everywhere she goes, she is mobbed. And everywhere I go, like people call, or like, yesterday we had a firm bowling event, and this sweet lady was like, Scott Vicknair, will you take a picture with me? I was like, sure, blah, blah, my name's David. And she's like, I'm so sorry. Like, no. I'm like, it's fine. But I think, the genius of the whole concept, which people could think about when they're trying to like lay out a marketing theme and think about like from a big high level, like what would make marketing effective. We kind of stumbled upon, to be honest. Like I didn't think through the level of this that really I think is the next level of why it's effective from a brand perspective is people remember the name. The joke is the name. And so like if you're different and funny and memorable, that's great. But if they can't remember who you are when they're looking for you, then it's not really good marketing, right? So I think from somebody who's got a small business or a law firm and they're trying to come up with like a marketing theme or creative that works for them, that's one aspect of it. The other part of it, to be honest, I really strongly feel like this is you have to be yourself. So when I was talking about earlier, I'm not comfortable like ripping up checks or doing some of this stuff that a lot of stuff I see in my market. I am trying to be myself. I'm very close with my mom. I talk to her every other day. If I don't talk to her every other day, she's like, well, she acts like I've never talked to her before. And some people could probably relate to that with their moms, but we're very close, and I'm kind of like a dry humor, funny guy. Like, so I like a lot. I'm a lot of the themes and the creative we develop, it turns into like, do I think it's funny? Do I giggle at it? Do I laugh? And so I think some of it, the audience probably can tell whether or not it's inauthentic or real. And so you can't just have like a great theme, which you love, which you think is different, which is funny, that would maybe be memorable and people remember your name. It also has to be, I think, authentic to who you are if you're going to be involved in it.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I want you to talk about, which is how you've done it, because we always think, to be on TV, to go and compete, whether you're a law firm or another business, that, you have to have this massive budget. And so I want you to talk a little bit about the kind of the production of the commercials, because you really found a creative way to do it and figured out a way to get into your market, to be able to compete in your market at a fraction of the cost that some of these big firms or big companies are spending.
Yeah. So I think, it's one of those things where for us, we use TV production for our TV commercials. So like the production team, for most of them, we're about to go, the first commercial we're about to ever shoot that we pay for outside production coming up. But a lot of local TV stations have pretty good production. Some of them no, but like you can ask around and really find out which stations have good production teams. And what's happened with us is the production team that we use here in New Orleans, the TV station, their group has really kind of bought into the theme. Like they're having fun with it. They don't really, one of the things I didn't know this when we started, they were like amazed that we kind of wanted to develop the theme with them, because a lot of times they have companies or law firms that come in and are just like, this is what we're doing, this is the creative, and tell them what they're doing, or they produce it out of house and just give them the spots. And so they were kind of like, when we started doing this, they were like, man, they're like letting us be a part of the creative, and they kind of were having fun with it and have kind of bought into it. Now it's funny, like at different people at the TV station, we're on multiple stations, but the one that does our production, they will like pitch me on concepts now, like at events or something. They're like, hey, I was thinking today, I got a good Scott Vicknair pitch. You ready? And like, so they're invested, even though they don't make any more money or anything like that from like giving me concepts or coming up with creative. It's not technically their role. The TV stations make money on air. They sell air, whether it be digital air, television air, streaming air. And so production is not a big profit center for them. And they're, of course, happy to help you with the cost of production when you're starting out, if it's going to develop a relationship with you, that they see you as someone who will spend more and more money with them over time, and a marketing partner. And so that's a small little way to really save on production costs when you don't have $100,000 production budget, aside from the immense amount of money it costs to put money in different places. The other thing is just different strategies from my perspective at least, we're in this, but we're only month 16. Like we've been doing it for 16 or 17 months now. It's like, you got to pick a channel. And for me, at least, looking out my condo at the interstate here in New Orleans, there's a lawyer billboard every other billboard. And I don't think that's true to every market, but you have to be, I think, introspective and strategic and smart about like what is happening in your market, and pick a channel, because you can't be everything and you can't be everywhere when you don't have $20 million and to spend on marketing. And so for us, we made the strategic decision that if we were going to go and do brand marketing, of course, we were already doing SEO and PPC and digital, and we have a whole marketing program, which we spent years building out, which I think is more important than brand, which is the foundational stuff like list management, newsletters, events, and all those things that really kind of generate relationships and referrals. But if you're going to pick a brand channel, my 2 cents on it is you got to pick one, and you got to go all in on that one.
The other awesome thing that you've done is got into the world of NIL, and I know you have some kind of some creative ways there too. So talk a little bit about how you've got into this world of NIL and how you approach it, and again how you're using it at a competitive way.
Yeah, so I was paying attention to the case whenever the lawsuit was happening, and I had for years been and still am, been a financial supporter of my university. And, like probably other people, you always get pitched on like these athletic program sponsorships, and they're very expensive, and you're like, is this really good marketing? Or what is this doing? Where's the money going? All those things. And so for me, after doing that for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and we weren't spending a ton of money on marketing, it was just important to me to support the athletic department at my university. It still is. But that started making me think like, I could spend less money. The money would go straight to these college athletes. You would develop relationships with them. And from like I had mentioned in Scottsdale, from a marketing perspective, you're kind of penetrating many markets by aligning your brand with these young men and women who are very appreciative to just get NIL deals and be a part of that program, because they never had that opportunity before. And so I just liked the idea of it, and I thought it would be fun, and I thought it would be good marketing. And we did it at first. The first football season we did it, we signed a couple football players, and we probably didn't do it that well. But we just were kind of messing around and figuring it out. We learned some lessons, not to talk to the agents, to go straight to the athlete. We kind of, what was reasonable cost, what was not a reasonable cost, did some research on that. Like, how do celebrities get paid for impressions on social media? And so I just think a lot of people get so intimidated by it because they're like, oh, NIL, like I don't understand what it means. It's really just influencers is all it is. It's no different than the people that pay the Kardashians to put a product on their social media platform. It's the same thing, but for college athletes, and they don't cost as much as a Kardashian. So depending on who you choose, some of them do. You can't not everybody can afford the high value, like the quarterback at the University of Miami or LSU, right? But you would be shocked at how much you could afford if you targeted specific athletes in specific sports, and they're not an unreasonable cost to partner with them. And more importantly, you're developing a relationship with that young athlete, that young woman, that young man. You're supporting them, and you're kind of penetrating their circle, and they're seeing your brand, in my mind, in my opinion, if you do it the right way, your brand as someone who supports them and their families and their friends, and wants to promote them and give them an opportunity to make some money and tell their story. And I just think that's fun and good marketing at the same time.
So I would imagine that when you started your own firm and went down this path, that you didn't think that you'd be spending as much time as you are developing marketing themes and marketing ideas, and I'm sure marketing wasn't your first thought in all this. So kind of take us to that evolution of where that mindset shift switch to where, yes, I'm a business owner. Yes, I'm the leader of this firm. And yes, I want to provide this amazing service for my clients. But also, I have to be able to be a marketer to be able to get that word out, to let people know that I truly am the best law firm here in New Orleans. So talk a little bit about that mindset shift for you, and how that's really evolved over the years.
Yeah, man, I think, Chris, it started thinking back to 18 and 19. And Brad, my law partner, had been a member of Great Legal Marketing for a long time. And he was like always really into it. And he was the one who pushed me to care about Keep, which is where we, Infusionsoft's product where we manage our client and lead list. And he was on me for 2 or 3 years, like, you need to, come to GLM, you need to read the magazines. I was like, I don't have time for that. I'm busy practicing, right? Like, I didn't. I was like, how do you have time for that? And I was busy practicing. And then I finally went to a conference with him. I think it was in 2022. And that was kind of like a big wake-up call for me. And we had some marketing partners back in 2020 who had left, and that was a big lead source for me from the standpoint of like where we were getting a lot of our cases from. And they just, for various reasons, decided to go a different route, and it was kind of like the rug pulled out on me. And so it was like, all right, well, I got to figure out where am I going to generate new cases, how am I going to market, all this stuff. And I just kind of shifted gears a bit and decided after going to that conference that I was going to really spend time in it. And maybe almost like just going to the gym every day becomes a habit that you consistently do. Like, you just kind of start doing it and consistently doing it. And before you know it, you get better at it. And then now I'm having like the time of my life doing it. But at the time, I thought it was a waste of time and I didn't have time for it. And it was, I don't want to say beneath me, but I'm like, this isn't my role. I'm a litigator. Like, I don't have time to do all this. Now I realize how dumb that mindset was. And just over the years, executing it, learning it, becoming a constant student of it, now it's fun. And for me, at least, it's just as intellectually challenging and interesting as like reading that new ruling on the changes of premises liability law in Louisiana from the Supreme Court. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, I know, you shared some books that really have impacted you, and one of those being Unreasonable Hospitality. So how have you taken that marketing mindset shift and adopted Unreasonable Hospitality to really provide that high level of service for your clients?
Yeah, so I've really been thinking a lot the last 6 months of like what my goals are. And I think as lawyers, especially you, me, and the spaces and the circles that we walk in, like when we say that, everybody's mind immediately moves to how much revenue am I going to do in 5 years? How many revenue am I going to do 10 years? Like, how big am I going to be? Whatever. And those are all things that we do, right, as a part of our coaching and EOS and planning and strategy. But for me, at least, my goal has really shifted to my why being very basic, which is I want to provide the best hospitality and the best result for every single client. And when somebody's like, what are you going to do with your law firm? How big are you going to get? That's all I think about, is that's what I want to do for every single client. Because if you do that, I have a strong belief that everything else will work out and it's going to be fine. So on the litigation side, having hired a lot of really good lawyers, trained them, being slowly phase myself out of the cases, and went through the mindset shift of being able to trust them, struggling with my losing my identity of no longer being a litigator if I'm not handling motions every day, writing the briefs, doing all those things. That was a mindset struggle and a journey, right? And so once I was able to let go of that, then that allowed me to focus really on not only managing the business, but looking at something like hospitality. And so it's like, how do you take hospitality? And at a law firm level, I think it starts at when the person comes in to when they leave. So they come in with the first phone call to you. Right. What is their first impression of you? Do you know? You know, like, and candidly, 2.5 years ago, I didn't know. And I went listen to some calls and I was mortified and thought I vomited in my mouth. Right. So, you know, you could go listen to some calls at your firm right now. I'll go listen to them. We probably both have the same, like, visceral, like, ugh. And so nobody's perfect, but it starts with the first phone call and intake or reception, and it ends, at least on the case journey. Doesn't end, but it ends on the case journey when you disperse their file either at settlement or hopefully with a successful verdict at trial. And so for me, we have begun probably a year ago, we started to really strictly analyze every piece of that client journey and figure out different things that we could implement to improve that experience along the way. And we've done a lot of things, but the exciting thing is, like, the team is so bought into this thing now. They're like bought into, like, it's never going to end. There will always be a new thing that we put in place and a new addition to make that experience so much better. And so, like, it starts there. The next step is getting your team bought in. And then it starts with, like, pick a couple things that you want to do, whether it be when the client comes in, there's, we do this menu and everybody's 5% about the cookies. Like, you just got to pick a couple things, execute them well, consistently, let the team see the feedback. That's a key. Let them see the feedback, both with the reviews and in verbally the things people say. And then let them start, when you start talking about it as a team, you start to get buy-in. And once you have consensus that this is important and they understand how it affects them, the business, and the client experience, then you can really start growing it and building it to different levels.
The last thing I'll ask you is what's the one thing that's impacted you the most as a leader, made you a better leader? And then in saying that, what advice would you give to leaders of whether it's a law firm or a business that is trying to make this switch that you've made and to build the firm that you're building?
Ooh, that's a hard question. Sure. I think it's probably, Chris, I mentioned GLM, we're members of PILMA, we're members of Fireproof. I would say both the leaders of those organizations, Ken, Ben, and Mike and John, and the incredible people that we have developed relationships with in those organizations. You, thinking in Fireproof, thinking about you, I'm just getting to know David Holt, Rich Godshaw, Zach Pritchard and his wife, super close friends of mine. Have all these friends in these organizations who are very abundance mindset, who are givers, who are continual learners, who want to grow as people and grow their firms as well. And so kind of finding the people that you want to surround yourself with who are humble. We're all different, all of us. But if I think about all those people, all of them, we all have some similar characteristics mixed in. A bunch of humility. We want to learn. We want to give. And when you surround yourself with all those people, right, it really changes you. And so the concept of you are you are the product of the 5 or 6 people that you hang around with, that cliche that is pushed forward to the generations, I probably just butchered it, is somewhat true in the law firm leader space. So be careful who you're around, because I've been lucky enough to kind of just wiggle around and find the people who I relate to, who I like, who I think are those types of people. And that's really had a positive impact on me. Obviously, my law partner is 100% like that. He's been an incredible role model leader for me. And so I would say that's the biggest one top of mind right now for me.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining me on First Light on Good Friday. And so I know that you've got some obligations with the family for Good Friday. So again, I want to be respectful of your time and thank you very much again for joining me today.